Hello, my name is Peter Giljam and I'm the owner of Zoosponsefull.com, and that's a platform where we share stories about animal training, enrichment and nutrition. Now, I've been working with animals for 15 plus years already all around the world, so I'm trying to put all that knowledge right in all those articles. Now, I'm consulting in different zoos too, so that's kind of who I am and what I do. Well, I'm working with animals already for 15 plus years, so it's quite a while ago when I started. But um, the first touch with wild animals was I did a practical training at an edutainment park. So there was an educational entertainment park, and they had harbor seals out there. So that was my first interaction with actual wild animals in front of me, and that was in. I'll have to think. I think this was 2002 or 2003 or something there. So it's quite a journey actually. Okay, so after this, I did one more practical training at the same place from a management standpoint, and then after I got an yeah, I was at a zoo, and this was my very last place when I was in school. So, but that zoo afterwards asked me to stay, so they wanted me to work there, and that was with California sea lions actually. Now, and I knew by now already that I wanted to work with killer whales instead. So after 5 years, or after 3 years, I was sent to a conference in Mexico, and that's where I met so many people that after a lot of networking, I started to apply to a lot of different jobs. I sent out my CV all over the place, and in 2010, I ended up in Canada. And I worked in Niagara Falls. That's a marine park with a lot of belugas. They had like a couple orcas back then. They had sea lions, walruses, dolphins, you name it all. So I worked with the seals, the sea lions, walruses, and dolphins in the show there. So I did this for 2 years. And then due to my visa and my work permits, I couldn't work there anymore. So then afterwards, well, I could, but the chances of getting a visa again was very, very little. So then I decided, okay, but then I have to go. So then I ended up in Spain, in the Canarian Islands. That's very close by Morocco, in front of it there, and that's why I work with killer whales in Loro Park. Now, after 1.5 years, I decided to go. I went to France, to the south of France. There's a park with killer whales, so I worked there for a year. And after this, and now we're talking about 2014, end of 2014, so this was October, I moved to Sweden, and that's where I worked for 5 years. And that's where I extended my animal knowledge, because I was mainly marine mammals, but then I all of a sudden was the coordinator animal training of the whole zoo. So I had the privilege to work with lions, with elephants, rhinos, you name it. I kind of work with them. So yeah, that was kind of the journey, very, very quickly explained. My opinion is that if it's not domesticated, it's wild. So marine mammals are wild on its own already. They still have the other wild things. The only difference is that they're in a zoo, so they're in human care. So we really care for them, and we did a lot of, yeah. When I worked, especially in Sweden, there was a lot of research done, same as in Tenerife. A lot of research for their wild counterparts. So we did in Sweden, especially, we did research with the alpine ibex and such, which was very cool. So, but the difference really is, well, in the zoo, we make sure that we can take care of them through positive interactions. Well, in the wild, yeah, they're so scared of people that they will go away, or at least most of them. So that's the difference. But at the end of the story, they'll stay wild anyway. The cool thing is there are so many, yeah, there are so many different ways now as of today through enrichment. For example, they like, we worked with a school back then. There was a technological school kind of thing, and we made a plan with them that they could build our enrichment for the chimpanzees and for the elephants, and that's where the how the kids were learning about technology and building a lot of different robot kind of things. We decided, you know what, can't you make stuff for us, for our animals, to lift up that enrichment to the next level? And that's what we did. So there was a lot of cool ways to feed the animals. There was a lot of cool tricks and all that stuff for the chimpanzees. They made this machine where there's 9 buttons, and the animal has to understand to press the one that lights up. And there were so many programs in there that it helps the cognitive ability of these animals. And I think that worked very well. But then you have, yeah, we did that Alpine Ibex research project, and they had like we trained them for wearing a collar. And in that collar, there was sensors like how the animal moves, so from left to right, from up to down. A GPS is in there, and so on. And with that technology, if we didn't have this, we couldn't do it. So, and similar to, there's the Anguilla project that's the zoo I used to work at was very, very busy with. And that was about Anguilla, which is a place in Africa where we try to train the rhinos like they did, but to wear a collar around their foot. And there's a sensor in there, and we could track them down with an app on your phone, and then you could see how many rhinos are there left if they have the sensor. So that's an ongoing process, but technology is one of the big, the big helps, like the big things that help us very much to face these challenges. So, and it gets only better. So this is very, very, very good, and yeah, very interesting to see. I think one of the big ones is I'm training animals all the time. I'm teaching people to train their animals. And one of the big ones is the fact that I can film every session. So I just film it, I look it back, and then people learn a lot faster and quicker, so they can rewatch their sessions. Not only this is already a big difference as before, especially with the quality of video now. Now, on top of this, what we always try to strive for is that all the exhibits that we are working with has a camera system, so I can just go to the computer, I can do my observation through within an hour, and I'm doing a 24-hour observation at the end of the story. Just because we filmed everything, I can go back and forth in video, I can save the video parts. So for the observational part, the welfare part, it's so much better, because all of a sudden you see things you've never seen before, which I think is as of importance to excelling your welfare for your animals, really. So it's funny because you're the second one asking me this. The whole point behind this is I'm very much into, I like to do a lot of research and stuff. Well, not myself, but train animals so people are able to do research. If we only have animals that are trained for a certain basic and foundation things, like standing still or being checked or getting blood samples, or I don't know all what, we get to know so much more about our animals. Give you an example, like the reason that we know so much about dolphins and killer whales is because we train them. We train them for everything and anything with operant conditioning and the emphasis on positive reinforcement. So we train them with this, and we can go so far that we can train them for hearing tests, what we've done in Laurel Park. We can train them for so many things. We can train them to chuff in a sample area to see what bacteria live there, all those things. We can do research about everything. So if we just train all the animals these basics, all of a sudden we get to know things about animals we've never knew before. And what happens now is that we start to understand why we need to protect certain species, because we've done that research. And I think there are too many species in zoological facilities still that they do not do training with. And you know, they don't do training with them, so you can't do the research that you would like to have. Now, I'm a big believer of the reason we know that a chimpanzee, an elephant, and a dolphin are so intelligent is because we've trained them for so long. But maybe whatever, a rhino or a giraffe. Well, yeah, but like we do not know enough about them to say if they're intelligent, yes or no. We know a whole lot of things, but we never did really cognitive tests or whatever, what fits that species. And I think if we've done more tests, if we do more cognitive ability tests and look at the intelligence, look at what they're capable of, we get more respect for the animal. We want to protect them more because we know more about them. And that's how we can actually save the world in that way, only by training the animals, like for research purposes. Any encounter? Well, to be honest, I have many encounter. I have a lot of animals that I encountered. There's some, yeah, I work with a specific animal that was like the encounters were very special to me, at least. There was this, I felt this connection, this relationship building, this playful thing. There was with the killer whale, but that encounter, that like, if somebody would tell me, Peter, you work with so many different species, so many different individuals. Is there one individual that you would really miss or you would like to meet again? Yeah, that's this specific animal. So yeah, I think that encounter was very, yeah, that still is, yeah, that comes from deep, basically, that encounter. So I always remember this. But there's also encounters that I'm like, ah, those were actually pretty cool as well. Meeting elephants, meeting other big animals. It's such a great way to connect with animals, really, and see what they do, and play with them. I like to play with animals to see what the responses are. So, and that's what I used to do a lot with the dolphins, with sea lions, and so on. So that's a pretty cool thing. But that one with the killer whale was really, yeah, that was a very good encounter I had, to be honest. Yeah. And not necessarily one encounter, but the things that I really enjoy looking at is because we are trying to empower the animal's choices all the time. And if an animal has um, never really been opened up to this, and then all of a sudden we try to open this empowerment up, and we try to tell the animal, look, just let us know what you would like to do, then like we do have a plan, but if you want to go this way instead, well, the 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 look that an animal has and the sparkles that comes out of it, it's just incredible, especially if you really know you've done something well. So we had one chimpanzee, for example, where we changed the whole system around in this zoo. And it was about 20 chimpanzees, and there was one we had a very hard time motivating, actually, to be in
Okay.
our sessions. So we thought about a lot of stuff. We thought, you know what, if we make it so the animal never really knows what it will get, but it's still very good, but it just doesn't know what it will be then. They were like, okay, but how is this going to happen? And then eventually that didn't work. So then we discovered one day you like oranges, the other day you like almond nuts. We have no idea. And then we came to the idea, you know what, let's turn the table around. So then we talked about this. It's like, okay, what if we just grab a couple cups? In those cups is the same food, and we just ask them every time you did something well, what do you want? And then it would pick its own reinforcer. So after we trained them this, all of a sudden this animal was attached to this training session. It wanted to be there, it wanted to learn, just because it had this choice all of a sudden. So it was very, very cool thing to see how this actually worked. Then the similar thing there was with an Eurasian eagle owl, the uhu, they're also called. Very, very big, beautiful owls. We changed the whole training system to a more empowering system. And all of a sudden, the keepers told me, now we're implementing all of this, and we make that variety with the reinforcer, and we do not give the reinforcer away anymore. It's a surprise all the time. You see that the animal is trying and trying to figure out what we want to work together through the team that we've developed together, and they've never seen this before. So the keepers were very, yeah, very happy and delighted, like, okay, wow, what's happening here? which was very cool to see actually how the birds of prey, who are normally very instinctual, all of a sudden showed a certain emotion, a certain behavior like this, which they've never seen before. So there's, as you say, there's a million stories I can tell. Um, but yeah, so that's kind of some of them that were with me very, very much. But as I say, I can tell you a ton of different stories if you like. So we are doing, I'm focused very much on positive reinforcement. Yes, 100%. You want to know the reasons why? So first of all, what we're trying to do and what I want to put out there is we're using operant conditioning, which is obviously came up with yeah, Thorndike back in the day, and then Skinner picked it up and he built the whole scientific studies around this, and then came up with this whole system, which we still as of today apply to a lot of different animals. Now we're learning a lot more and more and more and more, but what I wanna say is that we are using operant conditioning with the emphasis on positive reinforcement, just because focusing only on positive reinforcement is actually very, very hard and almost impossible, I think. So there's always, yeah, it's never 100% there. So therefore, we do the emphasis on positive reinforcement. But um, the thing here is that I believe that if I'm telling the animal all the time that their own choices in that environment that I put it in, and I try to put it in an environment which is positive for the animal already, to empower them to work with me, to help me, so I can help them, to work together, so the welfare of the species, of the individual, actually goes up. And there are so many more pros to reinforcement methods than punishment methods, even though that punishment methods, the outcome is a lot faster, while reinforcement methods, it takes a while before you have an outcome. But the big difference is, it's, yeah, you have an animal that would like to learn with you, stays creative, and he feels empowered and all those things, compared to an animal that is waiting for your guidance, that is waiting for what to do and the decision making. So it's kind of, in some way, you suppress a certain, yeah, emotion almost. You call it apathy, where the animal doesn't really think about those next steps anymore, because it's waiting for you to decide for the animal instead, which I'm not a big fan of whatsoever, just because it also has a lot of welfare complications for the animal itself. So therefore, we are using one over the other. Now, from a technological standpoint, what's recently happening more and more is, for example, this is actually already a couple of years ago, and I was not involved in this. This was a center in, I think it was in America somewhere, where they actually did remote training with a Steller sea lion to teach him life skills, to put him back in the ocean again. And this animal's obviously in rehab, so it came in sick. Then they trained it and stuff, but they didn't want to connect the trainer to the animal. There shouldn't be a relationship between the two, because in the wild they wanted to swim away from people, but they still wanted to train this specific animal. So certain technology had to happen to be able to do those things. Now, in the enrichment world, that's where it's very common to use technology. You have a lot of machines and things that randomly drop food in the exhibit. And what's happening now is that the animal sees it as very unpredictable, but it uses the exhibit a lot more. So there are devices there where you can text and where you send a text message to this device and it drops food in the exhibit, even though that I'm sitting right here at home while the zoo is all the way at the other side. So enrichment wise, it helps you very, very much. Training wise, yeah, I would just say, from the positive reinforcement standpoint, yeah, the big thing is that you can film yourself. And I think that's a big technology part. Besides, I'm not sure in how far you can become more, yeah, from, yeah, the technology placing in there, because an example is many people prefer closing a gate still by hand, and the reason is just I have control over that gate now. But if I have a whole technology system in there and I'm pressing a button which closes the gate, it breaks like this as well, because it's a lot of technology stuff. And if that thing breaks on a moment, you really need to have them separated. Yeah, you don't want this. There's still a lot of people that prefer, let me just do it by hand, because you have more success at the end of the story. So it has its pros and cons in certain situations, but yeah, if you talk technology within positive reinforcement, it mainly happens kind of in research situations, really. But if I just train an animal, I just need a reinforcer and my whistle or a clicker, and life is good. So I do not need anything else. So it's very simplified, really. Well, I think, I'm not sure if you can avoid it, really. I never really thought about to avoid certain things with marine life, but I do think that if we talk about whale watching, for example, that we need to be a lot more strict um, to be away from the whales, because we get too close. Um, we that you have a lot of bycatch by fishermen and all those things. Now, the biggest issue, I think, is not that it happens, but giving the people another way of earning their money. And I think that that's the challenge, and not necessarily to stop it, because if I can give them another offer or option, then if they take that offer and option, then the protecting the marine life will be easier, because they will stop it. So that's the thing, but that makes it very, very tough. I also think that through our research that we do in the zoos, that we can actually help for example, those fishermen. We can help them with saying, you know what, we are going to try to subsidize you, to give you those type of fishing nets who have sounds in them to chase away certain marine life and stuff that you don't need. So I think we have to go more that way. But at the other hand as well, um, there's only so much fish to catch, so we have to also be careful there. And I think too, like for example, there's in Sweden, Mats Amundin did a fantastic job with discovering their harbor porpoises place where they actually raise their moms, and through all the research, through all the finding out how much sound there is in the Baltic Sea, and where those animals are, it all of a sudden became a nature reserve. And I think through proving the fact that, hey, this is how much sound is out there, those are the issues that we have, and it's correlated together, we have to take action. I think that we have to keep on doing it. But I also think that education starts with teaching kids about a lot of things. That's another one that I think that we should slowly go to, and we should even think more about, maybe if you want to become a fisherman, you have to understand how species survival works, and to get your license or something. Maybe we need to go that way. So not ban it, but educate the people about it, and tell them why they are important, why that cycle has to be there. Well, maybe that's not there. So I think that banning it is maybe a little bit extreme, but I think we need to work together to find a solution. And I think 9 out of 10 times it all comes down to education. Let's educate. Let's teach people. I definitely think so. It's you know what, I see it almost. Yeah, it sounds pretty bad, but I see it almost as animal training. It's one kid learns different as the other. That's the whole thing. So of course, I just have to think about, we can teach those kids this, but we have to do it in a very playful way. We have to be very, like, practical. We have to take them, like, I always loved field trips in school. So let's do field trips. Let's go and see. Let's go and see how we can help. Let's go and see how we can change it. And I think that that's a very big one, to teach the kids about it. But that's only, that will not solve the whole issue because it still is happening. But therefore, I think we should work together with the fishermen and not against the fishermen. And I think that's maybe that's a mental switch already, because we're talking a lot about you can't, and we should ban everything. But have we ever thought about, yeah, okay, let's ban everything, and then there's no solutions for these fishermen that try to get money to survive? So what are we going to do now then? And I think that's a very difficult discussion to have. But therefore, I think, you know what? Fine, you do what you do, but you're going to do it safe for everybody. And then you can get your permits and whatever. So we can change the permit system to be able to say, you need this and this and this education for you to get that permit, or something like this. So I'm not sure if you should ban, but if we talk about the sharks and taking the fins off, those things I think you should ban, because I don't think anybody gets good of this, and there are different solutions there. So there are so many issues in the world at the moment. I think one of the first, now I'm going to be very, very extreme, but I think one of the first things that in aquariums we have to start to do, and I'm talking about fish now mainly, is try to, and I'm not talking about all of them, this is just a couple. What I can't stand myself is educating people about an ecosystem, but at the same time, get the animals from the wild to put them in your aquarium. That goes against each other, I think. So that's where, number one, the management should be right to be able to do it right.
Yeah.
But regardless of that whole thing, I think, again, trained animals will work very, very, very well. I've seen, this was in Denmark. I've seen a presentation there where you have these rays that normally live on the bottom. They were trained to go up on a stick against the glass. So what happens now? You learn about how do they look at from the bottom? How do they swim? What's happening? And all of a sudden, you get this feeling with those animals, and I think that's a big change. Now, I also need to say that fish and reptiles, it seems to be the hardest species for people to connect with. So we need to find a way to make people connect with these species and see what they're capable of. Now, and again, there was one aquarium with dolphins and such. They had sea turtles, they had some other fish, and they trained a fish to do shape discrimination. So all of a sudden you see what fish is capable of as well, how intelligent they can be. And I think that if we keep on showing those things, like octopuses who are extraordinarily intelligent, teach people about this, show them what they're capable of, and get this visitor having this connection all of a sudden. Because if they have this connection, they start to like that animal. When they like this animal, they want to protect it. So, and I think that's where we have to go to, but that's where a lot of training comes in again, and a lot of interaction comes in. But you can interact in a lot of different ways, really. Well, first of all, we need to do something about our the trash in the oceans. Now, this is slowly, we're doing a lot of about this already, but I still do not think that people care enough, I would say, that people understand enough, I would say. So there's still a lot of countries that are pretty far behind, but it's upcoming. So I think that's one big one. I also think that we have to start to understand how the ocean functions properly. There's a lot of researcher already out there trying to explain this and do so, but what I discovered too is You know, this is especially if we talk about the science of behavior management, for
Yeah.
example, like the Mr. Skinner. It's an easy example, but I will get to the point after. I discover now that if you are a PhD doctor kind of thing in behavior, it's for you very easy to understand. If you're like me and I'm somebody that's interested in this literature because I'm writing about it and I try to teach people about it, um, I discover the people that I'm teaching, they find it very difficult to read scientific papers, so they won't. So, which directly gets into, I need to simplify it for those people to make these people learn about it, because otherwise they will not learn about it. Now that's the same for that conservation stuff and all these things where there's a lot of research being done. It's fantastic, but people do not read it. People do not get it. People don't
Yeah.
get the understanding of the connections. Only a couple people are very interested in it. But if I think about my parents, for example, yeah, they kind of understand, but they kind of understand not. So it's like, how can we make them understand that, hey, if you keep on doing this, it's actually not right for the environment and not for the oceans. And the oceans is actually one of the most important things that we have to keep the world going. So I think that's where we have to go first. It's all about, because I'm 100% believer in many people are against because they don't understand, not because they are actually against. So that's where we have to find a way to teach them differently, I guess. And I think that's maybe where we have to change stuff to be able to pass the message, get the conservation stuff going, and make people understand what we're trying to do and how important it is. Um, you know what? If you work with animals, if you see animals, always try to be very open-minded and try to look at it from the animal's perspective. If you're going to a zoo or any other park, don't make conclusions right away. Ask about the zoo's welfare system because you can't see it. Um, at the end of the story, we all stand for the same thing. There are just 1,000 ways to roam to reach that thing. So always be open-minded, listen to other opinions, and learn and see how we can make it better. And I think that's one of the biggest ones, that we're doing good. We just have to make it better. That's all we have to
Yeah.
do.